Hello, everyone. I won't say good afternoon, good morning, or good night because I have no idea when you will be viewing this. But I'm pleased to be here with Mr. Oxenford, and this is the 2024-2025 growth report for the Pottstown School District. It's going to be a short report, but hopefully very, very informative. Let's see if I can get my slide to move. Mr. Oxenford, do you see purpose of this report on your screen?
Yes, I do.
Wonderful. Okay, so the purpose of this report, why are we doing this? Number one, we want to be accountable to ourselves. We want to make sure that when we said we are going to take a look at the numbers every single year, we're actually doing that. We also want to be transparent. It is important that whether you are a student, a parent, a community member, a staff member, or a board member, that we're all seeing the same thing and keeping ourselves on track as a district and as a community. So we want to review the results. Basically, we're answering this question. Did we, and when I say we, I'm really talking more about the education team here at Pottstown School District and teachers, administrators, et cetera. Did we have an effect on our students this year? Of course, we know that just by virtue of our good relationships, we're having an effect. But the question is, can we quantify how good of an effect are we have? Where are weak points in our strengths? So that's hopefully some, or those are some of the questions that will get answered as a result of this report. However, we do want you to know that what you're going to see from this point forward are growth numbers. Why? Because thanks to the Linkit report and some of the new software we've been using, we can do that now. So you're probably going to see this on or around the last day of school. So all the Linkit numbers are in, and we can see growth now. But we're not going to see achievement. So some people say, "Oh, you're showing me the numbers that are that you have right now, but what about achievement?" Well, we'll give you those numbers. If you want numbers right now, you can look on Future Ready Index, and you're going to see old numbers, but those are our numbers. And in terms of achievement numbers for every single grade through PSSAs, that comes in the fall. But we're not waiting for that because, again, we're going to answer this question. Did we have an effect on our students this year? So here's some connecting factors, some things to consider before we dive into the numbers. First of all, we'll take you all the way back to the comprehensive plan for the 80 plus people throughout the community and district that remember that it was in the Sunnybrook Ballroom. We spent days in there poring over data, looking at what our students say, our parents say, and saying, what is it that we need to do to get better? What were some of those elements? Common assessments. Hey, we're getting there. We're doing common assessing throughout the district, not 100%, but we're much better than we were before. And we're using the data to drive those decisions instead of many years ago when it was basically guesswork. I remember as principal seeing the PSSA data months later and saying, oh, okay, and so now that we're already into the school year, what can we potentially do to make this better? And it was hard. So now we're in a better place. We said we were going to use, and we are using benchmark data, K through 8 in both reading and in math. We said we were going to use professional development and connect that to support all that stuff we just talked about, common assessments, making good decisions, and benchmark data, and we're doing it. And finally, we said that we would align our curriculum resources. Years later, we're doing it. And of course, we have to align to the state standards. So the message here, in case you're unclear, is growth is what we're looking at right now. Achievement data will come later, but these two are inextricably connected. If you just look at achievement data and you don't look at growth data, you're missing it. Growth is what we call a leading indicator. Achievement is what we call a lagging indicator. Growth tells us where we're going. Achievement tells us where we've been. All right, moving on. Other connecting factors, monitoring student progress and growth. That is something we said we were going to do in comprehensive planning. We said we were going to be accountable. We said we were going to be transparent, and now we're doing it. MTSS, I think there can be no question that MTSS has helped us to change and get better at all of our processes. That's connected to vital signs, which happens right here in my office once every couple of months to make sure that we're on track and changing as we need to. For those of you who have been involved in cultural proficiency, you know, and you've heard me say this over and over and over again. We, as a school district, recognize that the students who get suspended or have the most struggle have to be part of our focus. And we have to look at those numbers and say, what are we doing as the educators, as the people in charge, to make sure that we are giving the most equitable educational programs possible? And so we're going to take a look at that and see if some of the things we've been putting into place have been effective and where we need to go. So with that as a caveat and kind of a backdrop, we can now start to look at these numbers, and we're going to have to take a minute to make sure that we understand what we're looking at. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I am going to ask our director of curriculum to take over and walk us through some of the numbers. Mr. Oxenford.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. So it's time for you to have some of the information and get feedback about what the growth looked like this year. And I think we're very pleased to have this information readily accessible. As Stephen had indicated earlier when he was explaining, there used to be such a lag between the amount of time between when students would take the assessments and the time that we would get the results that it was too late to do anything with that. And that was all part of the reason for the change called out in the comprehensive plan, that we needed timely information so that we could be better informed than ever before. But it's important that you know that anything we're going to show you today will demonstrate growth, not achievement. So this is what type of impact our educators, our resources, and the alignment of all of our systems having on student growth. Again, teachers, all of our staff members, community members, people need to have the truth about what's happening, because the reality is, and I'm going to say this, we have detractors, internal and external. We have people who have lots of old information that talk about what is and is not happening in our school system. And right now, it's we're at the point where I think we need to have good information and get that information out there. And with that, I'm going to give you the number 80%. 80% is used in MTSS on a regular basis, with like 80% of the content, 80% of the students achieving. Well, one of the things you'll see as we go through this report is that 80%, about 80% shows up everywhere, because you're going to have a talking point that you can use to help dispel some of the mislabeling that our detractors have used against our school system. So it's important to give credit to the people who are producing results. So most people are not going to see this, and there's tons of data inside of here. We get other reports that are hundreds of pages long. There's no way you'll get bored looking through all of the details, and it's almost impossible not to fixate on one little number when there's just an extreme volume of information out there. But you're going to see colors, right? You're going to see green, yellow, and pink. I'm going to pull up a shot and show this to you. We're going to highlight some of the individual all student groups and then the individual subgroups that capture some of the areas that people have had questions about over time. But you can see as you look through the different columns, and it's broken into categories, and I'll try to explain this to you. Stephen, can you see my cursor on?
I
Okay,
can.
right.
Yep.
So it's broken into four main categories. We'll say three subsets and then one overall. So think about it as like the primary grade levels, which are K1 and 2, upper elementary, grades 3 and 4, middle school, grades 5 to 8, and then they put it all together in the K to 8 model and say, how did we do overall all together? So when you look at any of these reports, anywhere where you see green and yellow, we would combine those scores to identify who are the students who grew at or above the expected rate. Again, at or above the expected rate. And the quick way to look at it, if you're want to take a shortcut, is you essentially take out the missing piece. So 100% of the students in, grades kindergarten through second took ELA. 13% of them did not grow at the growth expectation. However, that means that 87% did. 87% of our K through 2 students in ELA grew above the expected rate. And again, we continue all the way across. We look at grades 3 and 4. We can see that 84% grew above or at or above. And then in grades 5 through 8, we've got, 68%. And then overall, you'll see like when you look all the way to the right, all grades combined, that totals up. See it? 79%, about 80. Everybody's with me so far, hopefully. So you'll see about 80% of our students, K to 8, grew at or above the expected growth number. So now when we look at the performance in math, it's broken apart the same way. We've got it broken into early elementary, upper elementary, middle school, and then all groups combined. And you can see as we breeze through here, we're combining the two categories together. 80% of our students in grades K to 2 grew at or above. And you can see that these numbers, only 16% in grades 3 and 4, it means 84% were at or above. Middle school math, 80% of our students growing at or above the expected rate. And across the board, 81%. So again, when we say about having 80% on our radar as part of our conversation moving forward, what people should be willing to echo back out to other people is that we have information that substantiates that 80% of our students are growing at or above the expected rate. And we've got the information to back that up. Now, part of the other questions that we've been looking at is, well, this is overall. This is in grade level bands. The sample sizes are huge, right? Like we've got K to 2, 643 students within those grade levels. It's not necessarily the only way we look at it, because we also have looked at performance of students based on gender and also based on race. So we're going to take a look at what do those results actually look like, because it's important for everyone to have the current information that tells the story about how students are growing under our care. So I'm going to skip ahead to slide number 10. So slide number 10 has the performance of all of our categories of students. We've got Asian, Black, Hispanic, and multiple and white listed here. Let me just scroll out just a little bit. And you can see that as you go across the board and we're looking at the results, 62% of our Asians are at or above. When we look at Black, Hispanic, multiple, and white, we've got 78% of our students who are Black. And this is, again, this is for ELA. So in English language arts, again, I have it like zoomed in, so it's pretty hard to see. But in ELA, 81% of our students who are Hispanic are at or above the growth expectancy. And then with our students who are white, we've got 81%. So again,
Yeah.
about 80% across the board.
And Mr. Oxenford, just to confirm, our two largest groups are Black and white, with our third being Hispanic, and then Asian being the lowest number within our district.
That is correct. That is correct. So now when we look at the performance.
So let's pause here just for a second. Can you're our numbers guy, and anybody who knows Mr. Oxenford knows that he can work a spreadsheet better than pretty much anybody, and he works numbers. So there's this thing called achievement gap. Can you explain what achievement gap is? And what this tells you, if you're looking at this and you're saying, because you know that I have said, and we're all very concerned with achievement gap, what does this tell you?
So when we talk about achievement gap, it has to do with how students actually perform on the final assessment, and you start to compare. Now, remember, this is about the growth. This is about how students respond. So, what we wouldn't be okay with is any student sitting in any class not growing. And that's where we really have paid attention to the fact that our students responding to the resources put into place, our students responding to the staff members in the delivery of instruction, are they demonstrating that? And is there equitability with how students are responding? And the answer is this data shows that all students are responding pretty much equal across the board in terms of student learning and growth over the course of the school year.
Thank you.
So this is ELA. Now we want to take a look at math, right? Now math, this is again, you have to have a certain sample size in order for it to show up, and sometimes it does, it doesn't. But when you look across the board, you see 75, right? Asians, at or above, and there is no at. It's either above growth or below, and again, the sample size is small. But when we look at the categories across the board, you see 82% versus 77% are, and this is in our grades K to 2. And as we go a little bit further, we're going to see all of our students. So again, this shows all grades. This is all grades, math, all grades, all the categories that are included in our sampling. And you can see across the board, it's roughly 80% across the board. Students are growing at or above. And again, I thought it was important that people have that information to show that in both ELA and math across the board in all race categories, they're growing at roughly 80% of those students are at or above the expected growth. And then other questions we get have to do with gender, right? So there are times when we need to be able to answer the question about, well, how do girls versus boys into different categories? So again, it's important to have accurate information. So when we look at all grades, ELA, all grades, female versus male, right? When it's split into those two categories, we've got 80% of the females are at or above the expected growth. 77% of the males are at or expected growth. So you'll see like 80 and 77, it's about 80%. About 80% of our students, whether it's boy or girl, grow at or above the expected growth rate. And then for math, this is the last category we're going to take a look at. In math, right? Females versus males. 80% of our students who are female grow at or above. 82% of our students who are males grow at or above.
And
So
again,
again,
this is kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth.
that's correct. That's correct. So across the board. So really, I thought it was really important as we reviewed this data that was, hot off the presses. Everyone needed to have that information and see what did this school year look like in terms of growth, and it's important to have that feedback to know whether or not all of the things that we've put into place have been working, to be able to say that 80% of our students, like we've got it in all these categories across the board, subcategories in every different direction. It is important that we know that 80% of our students are growing at or above the expected rate according to all these metrics that we now have access to. And it's great for us to know.
And I love the fact that you called out the fact that there are detractors out there that honestly can be very discouraging, especially for, and this message is to our teaching staff and our support staff who work with students every single day. I want you to know this is great news. Growth is where it's at. It is the leading indicator. So Mr. Oxenford said detractors. Our students would say haters. Everybody's got haters, I am sure. But what this shows us very, very clearly is we are doing good things. And the stuff that we put together in comprehensive planning is really having an effect. So I'm really pleased with this. I think we're on the right track, but we have to keep going. No one has declared victory. No one is resting on their laurels in the Pottstown School District. We've got a lot more work to do, but I think it's a lot easier when we know we're on the right track. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, board members, for all your support and guidance. Thank you, staff, for putting in another excellent year. Thank you, students, for helping because really this is all your growth. And thank you, parents and community, for your support as well. I hope that you have found this to be informative and helpful information.